Today we are together with Rebecca Jean Charles. Good to see you. And for us, it's the second time. The first recording, we had a lot of tech problems. So
Yeah.
good to see you again.
Yeah, the same, the same.
Rebecca, I have heard part of that story when we recorded first time, but if you would be so kind to share with us why and how you started homeschooling and unschooling.
Absolutely. Um, so I think the most powerful portal for me was, or maybe there were two, and the one led into the other, maybe. So before I got pregnant, I was working as a Pilates teacher. I decided to do a pre and postnatal Pilates teacher training. And the teacher, she told me about like the work as a doula, and that was so eye-opening for her to really understand the needs of moms and the bodies of moms and all of that. And then I had never heard about that. So, but it really caught my interest. So I ended up doing a doula training. During that doula training, I fell pregnant. And I came into the training thinking that if I should ever get pregnant, I'd have a C-section probably, because my mom had all of her children with a C-section. And I got out of the training and thought, like, of course I'm gonna have a home birth and a free birth. Like, of course I can do this. And I totally understood what went wrong with my mom and all the things. And that was really that training. Not only was it that I decided to free birth, but also that something clicked inside of me because in the doula training we talked so much about like that mothers and babies, also newborns or unborns, are worthy, and that they have the right to make decisions and the possibility to make decisions and all the things. And it was really eye-opening for me. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, even I as a woman have like the right to express my needs, and I have the right to be heard and all the things. And the same goes for children. Actually, for me, it was easier to see it with the children. I think many of us parents recognize that sometimes um, we have more tolerance, or at least moms. I don't know how it is for dads actually, but for moms, I think we often have more tolerance to receive like disrespectful behavior or something like that, and we don't really dare to stand up for ourselves, or we think like, well, wasn't that nice, but I'll just bite my tongue or something. But when it comes to our children, then there's like somehow it's something different, and then this lion mom comes out. And then I had had my first home birth, free birth, and then I realized through all these experiences with how much abuse I was living. In that particular time, I was living in an abusive relationship, but also I realized how I even got there in the first place, and that I had already been exposed to so much abuse for so long. A lot of this through the system. And I a few months ago, I posted a reel on Instagram, and I described my situation, and I didn't say that I was talking about school. And most people thought I was talking about that I was part of a cult, or that I was imprisoned or something. And then when I at the end revealed that I was talking about school, everybody was like, what? That video actually went viral, because I think it spoke to so many people. And that was once I realized that, I thought like, no, I absolutely don't want that for my children, because what we are exposed to, especially as children, that becomes our normal, right? Like, and that's also in abusive relationships or domestic violence. You talk about normalized violence. We talk about normalized violence, so that, you know, after some time, you don't even notice anymore what's happening, and that it's happening, and that it doesn't, that it's not right. And therefore you get used to it more and more and more. And like the threshold for what you're willing to accept also increases, because you're, or decreases, like you're more okay with more things because you get so used to it,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Rebecca, I would love to ask you to unpack it more, just for me to see the connection where you're talking about the school system as abusive.
yeah, totally.
Because for some people, that word would be like, "Oh, I wasn't abused in school."
No.
But I think I maybe know what you mean.
Mhm.
But if we can talk a little about, or unpack what you mean about how the
Absolutely.
system leads you to accept abuse.
Mhm.
Is it the controlling? What is it, the
Yeah,
aspect you're pointing at?
totally. That's such a good point, such a good question. Um, so for example, that like in the first place, just like now I grew up in a country where school is mandatory. So there's no consent in the whole picture. Like nobody asks you, do you want to go there? Do you want to be there? Is that something you like? You just have to go. And it's sold to you as a, like as a privilege. And but there's um no room to negotiate, or no room to just say no, or no thank you. Um so consent is a big thing, like being forced to be somewhere and do something without your will, without even being asked, in this case. Being in a place, in a building with people that, like, you don't have a choice as when you go to school. Maybe in some schools, of course, like when I talk about school, I know there's also many, many different kinds of schools, and some schools are different. But like my experience, and I went to mainstream school, but a school with a good reputation, or several schools with good reputations in a Western European country. Um, so yeah, the like the consent piece as the, like the overall, in the overall picture, I think is a very big one. Then, for example, that you are forced to kind of disconnect from your body. You don't have the right to tend to your basic physical needs when you need to. Like you cannot move your body, or you're not allowed to move your body when you want to move your body. Again, there are certain schools that, there's free schools or whatever, where things are slightly different, but that was not my experience. And I know that is also not the experience of the majority of kids at school today in the whole world, probably. Um, I wasn't allowed to move my body when I needed to move my body. I wasn't allowed to drink water when I needed to drink water. I wasn't allowed to go to the bathroom without permission. And there was somebody else who could deny me permission to go to the bathroom. Um, yeah, like all these kinds of basic needs, they are not allowed in many times at school, which creates that we get so disconnected from our bodies, um, which can, or eating, of course, also. You're not allowed to eat when you want to eat, and like there's also at schools, for example, where food is served, I know also that is a big problem for a lot of kids because they don't like the food, for example, or they're sometimes they even can't, like they're even allergic to the food, or the parents don't agree with the food that's served or something. But there's also often not the possibility to choose rest or sleep. Like you cannot, like at school, you cannot say, hey, I'm so exhausted. I don't know, my parents were fighting the whole night. That didn't happen for me, but I bet it happens for many. My parents were fighting the whole night. See, and I couldn't sleep. It was so loud, or I was so scared or so worried. I just need to rest. I can't concentrate. Or I I feel so much pain in my soul. I just need to talk to somebody. I can't, concentrate on learning grammar when I feel my inner world is breaking apart. Um, and I feel like it's not only like hippie people who think this. It's like it's mainstream big science that knows how important and how essential emotional well-being is for all humans. And also um, yeah, also in order to actually being able to learn things and having the capacity to receive things. But that is another thing that is not related to the abuse that I'm talking about. Yeah, I think
Can
these
I
are
say something?
some of the,
I
yeah,
think
sure.
in the context of what you're saying, I've just been thinking about how the curriculum and the whole base idea of the schooling that someone else knows what you need to become because what you are is not enough and what you think you want to become is not right. So the things you're passionate about can be considered your hobbies and things you do in your free time. Whereas in the school context, you have to go into learning these things that someone else says you need to learn to become good enough. And they will even rate how close to good enough you are with the whole rating system.
Exactly.
And then I was thinking about, I mean, you and I know that, and probably most of the listeners have that installed. But what I was thinking about was all these basic human needs that are taken away from us. Not no, like the right to rest, the right to contemplate, the right to look out the window and think about something else, the possibility of talking to an adult in peace and quiet, go to the bathroom when you need to, eat food that you find is right for your body, when you find it right for your body, drink water, move your body. These privileges can be obtained by obeying to the other system. If you're a good student, you will be the one who's always allowed to the bathroom. If you're a good compliant
Totally.
student and you have high grades and you like your handwriting is really neat and all the things, you will have that moment with the teacher after class if you need someone to talk to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they will not stop you from moving around on the chair or maybe reading a book under the table or attend to your own needs because you're complying with the system. And that's
Yeah, yeah.
actually a huge form of violence because you need to accept that you are not good enough, and the only way to become good enough is to walk the exact path someone else carved out for you.
Exactly. Exactly. And
Think about.
Yeah.
totally. And all this like manipulation and gaslighting, like for example, I don't know if everybody's familiar with the expression gaslighting. I didn't
Well,
know it
explain
back
because
then.
we don't know
But
either who's going to listen to the
exactly,
podcast.
exactly.
So
Therefore, I'm
maybe
just
yeah,
gonna
just
say
do it.
the
Yeah.
gaslighting, it comes from some movie, I believe, but it doesn't really matter. What gaslighting means is that somebody somebody else tries to tell you that your own experience, your own feelings are wrong, and what they are thinking is the right thing. And that is, for example, is very common that already happens with small kids. So when a child, cries, for example, then adults often go to the child and say, oh, but it's stop crying, this is not bad, it doesn't hurt, it doesn't bleed or whatever, and it's not bad, like there's no reason to cry. But who am I to tell somebody else that you don't have a reason to cry? I don't know what it feels like in your body, and I don't know if it's bad or not bad. And like, obviously, if you're crying, you have a reason to cry. And that just happens so many times. Like I actually liked going to school, and I came from a very academic family. My parents could support me easily. I feel like I got that with the breast milk, the whole academic stuff. So it was like, I didn't have big struggle. I know a lot of unschooling families or unschooling parents, they came to this path because they themselves had a really hard time at school. That wasn't my case. But still, like if you're a student who says like, hey, I don't want to go there because I feel horrible. I get bullied, or I just hate being there. I really don't have any interest in this, and I would love to do something else instead, or whatever the case may be. Or, I just get, it's just overwhelming for me. That is, for example, one thing for me that I learned through my kids. My kids are super sensitive. And I'm not sure if maybe many more people are also actually super sensitive, but we've just been conditioned to get out of our sensitivity, that we numb ourselves so much. Even though I've been working with myself and trying to unnumb myself for so long, like I'm so disconnected many times. And that again is part of the abuse that's happening. Like, you have to numb yourself so much so that you can make it. Otherwise, like, that's like your shield. Otherwise, you would break down. Yeah, right?
Yeah, and Rebecca, that's one of the things which still stands clearly for me from the first time we tried to record when the tech problems we had,
Yeah.
was you actually made a connection between the numbing of believing in your own body, or having the right to your own body and control over this, to you ending up in an abusive relationship, that you accepted this, that you, if I remember correctly, you say that school has been part of making you accept that. Is that
Totally.
okay understood?
Yeah, totally. And I feel like so many of these patterns that, for example, again, the gaslighting, that somebody else tells, like, I feel maybe, I remember clearly, actually, even though like I said, I had a good time at school and so on, but I remember clearly, when I was little, I was thinking like, okay, I'm going to school and all the things, but really, if somebody would drop me somewhere in the forest, and I would be by myself, would have no clue what to do and how to live, because none of this I'm learning. Like, I have all these great grades at school, but for the real things in life, I'm actually not equipped at all. And that is what I actually just wanted to say with this gaslighting. Like, if somebody says like, hey, I don't like this, I hate being here, and then the adults tell the student or the kid, but it's really good for you, you have to do this, and you might not know it, you might not like it, but I know this is good for you, this is so important for you, and so on. That is like gaslighting, when like telling the other person, no, but you're wrong, and your opinion, your thoughts, your feelings don't matter. Like, now when I think about it, I know kids who are, like, for example, who live in Sweden. I work with a lot of Swedish parents, And in Sweden, school is mandatory. And I know kids who are like just barely surviving, literally just barely surviving. And the authorities don't care. Like the most important thing for them is that the body of that human is in that particular building. And I'm thinking, and you know, like these children, it has nothing to do with them, their academic competence or something. Not at all. Some of them are super amazing, brilliant, but they just have terrific experiences. They maybe have been exposed to a lot of bullying. Maybe they are still so connected to their sensitivity that they get super overwhelmed by being in a room with other 30 people. I mean, today I would go crazy. Somebody would tell me, you have to spend like 8 hours or 10 hours of your day surrounded by 30 other people, and you don't have a choice if you want to be there or not, and you don't have a choice to choose like who those 30 people are. You just have to be there. And that for me is just so out of proportion, and it doesn't make sense to me, because again, like our basic physical and emotional well-being is essential for everything else. I mean, what does it bring to us at the end when we have been spending all these years in that building? But then, I mean, today so many like teenagers already or young adults are burnt out, or already on like retirement, like early retirement, because they're incapable to work. That like I feel something should make us think here, like, is this actually working, what we are trying to do?
I'm thinking about, so we are right now in Kharkov for a World School pop-up, and it just ended 2 days ago, the big event. A lot of families are still in the city and were also before. So it's not just the week, but the week obviously is more intense. And we've been around 30, 50 something people. And I was just thinking, and this is voluntary and out and about in the free moving around world. But still, it's overwhelming for all of us. We're with 5 teenagers right now, 3 of our own and 2 friends. And I just noticed it's always like that. But of course, with this huge social event that's just happened, we spend so many hours a day talking about the social experiences we've had. What's going on, who's who, what did I feel, was that comment okay or not, how can we understand what happened there, what do you think is going on with that, all of these things. And it's just such a contrast between how you're structured in the school system to sit down and when you can speak and when you cannot speak and what you can talk about and who you can talk to. And you're only with your same age group, so you have no one who's more experienced and no one who's less experienced. You get to, because there's a lot of comfort in getting to hold someone else's space. And that experience is completely taken away from, I mean, all of the talk I've heard the teenagers have this week, and the role I've had the honor of playing in it as kind of a mirror, someone more experienced and someone who was there to see what happened, and was able to just to have my perspective on it. All of that is taken away from the children in the school system. Yet one of the most frequent questions and critiques we get as world homeschoolers and world schoolers is, how will they ever learn to socialize?
Yeah, exactly.
It's lame. And it's so hard to explain to people in the mainstream world how you're ruining their ability to grow as social humans by putting them in this artificial, weird kind of prison cell social life. And that must be so yeah, I can't even remember.
I think the skill you learn the most is how to actively ignore other people. That was one of the things I came out with, that I'm quite good at. If I go into a room with a lot of people, I can zone them out, and that is to protect
Yeah.
just my own being there with
Yeah.
so many people, so many relationships and interactions that could take place. And I want to bridge a little into the name of your homepage. It takes a village .se, which because have the village grown too big? If it was people I knew close, all these people, then it would maybe be easier to walk into a room with 30 people.
Mm.
But it is forced and non-chosen, and I mean, just going now, I'm luckily live this free life where we travel. I don't need to be in a workplace. I remember one day in the spring, I had to be at a place for 6 hours, and it was crazy. I felt robbed of my freedom.
Yeah.
I felt that there were so many people that and some of them, it's a place I've worked, so it was good to see them again and have a little chat with them. But that took 2 or 3 hours to get around and say hi to everybody and feel where they were. And I'm like, you cannot do that every day with so many people. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I also wanted to go back to a little bit this like the abusive
Yeah.
nature. There was one more thing that I think is very big and very destructive, is the fact to be constantly observed and constantly judged.
Yes.
And that is something that I then re-experienced in my adult life. And again, because I was so used to it, I didn't recognize it. It didn't hop into my face because it was so normal for me. That, I mean, that's what you do at school, right? There's constantly somebody else telling you, no, not like that. No, don't do this. Not right now. No, sit down. No, go there. Don't talk now. There's like constantly, they're like so managed, the humans. And I experienced that again as an adult, that somebody else took over my life and thought it was okay to tell me what I could do, who I could talk to, when I could talk. Don't laugh so loud, don't do this, don't do that. It and it's sold to us as like we do this because we care so much for you and we know better what's best for you and so on. And the same with the judgment, and that like you're not free to explore and free to do. There's somebody who's always sitting there kind of waiting for you to make a mistake, and that installs so much fear, and it also normalizes this fear of like, oh, I might do something wrong, I might make a mistake, whatever. And I think that, for example, impacts us extremely much. This fear of making mistakes in our relationship to our relationship with mistakes, if now mistakes even exist. I think, mistakes, we could also see them as like, this is one way how it could unfold, or how you could see it, but you could also do it in a different way. But
That bigger,
yeah.
what gave you the strength to break free? I was it becoming a mother a big part of it? Was
Yeah.
starting to question the school systems a part of it? What was part of it? How did you do it?
No, I think that's what I mentioned before. When I suddenly felt like somehow when it was about myself, I wasn't able to see it. I guess, yeah, it was so normal to me and it was so much in my face that I couldn't see it. But when I had a little bit of distance and children were involved, and my children were involved, then it became suddenly so obvious for me. And then as I was tending to my own healing from, and you know, like before I could tend to my own healing, I first needed to recognize what was it actually, what had been going on, because I wasn't able to see it, because like I said, we're so normalized to it. And once again, when I go back to this video that I created, we didn't tell people from the beginning that I was talking about school. Everybody thought I was talking about abuse or an abusive relationship or something. So we are like, that made me so blind to what was happening. And I think that also makes a lot of other people today blind what is happening on so many levels in their lives, not only in their private relationships, but also, on a systematic level and so on. And for me, like when I then started like looking at what is it actually, what happened, and I traced it back and so on, and then then I came more and more in contact, I found to attachment parenting and natural parenting and gender parenting and all the things, and through that, I had just one realization after the other. And then suddenly, like for me, it's like a one-way road. Like once you know these things, once you've learned and seen the things, you cannot unknow or unlearn or unsee. So it's like you can just only continue. Either you decide to just not look at the things and not open the book and understand the things, but once you do, like then you also have to like walk the path, because it's so big, and otherwise it would go so much against what I believe and what I know. So the path was just forwards. And my kids were born in Sweden, where homeschooling is strictly illegal, like I mentioned before. But it was not that didn't stop me. Like it had become so obvious to me that is such an important puzzle piece when we are raising our children, that I felt like, okay, then I just need to find another way and another country.
I just saw a number in Denmark. It's 17 to 20% have been bullied like harshly inside the last year in fourth grade, and I'm just like, so that's a lot of children.
That's all
Exactly.
fifth.
And
Yeah.
and that is the bullying, like probably between the kids. But what about the kids that, for example, are just totally overwhelmed by having to be in this building, or by, for example, having to be there at a certain time, like early-ish in the morning.
Yeah.
For some people, it just doesn't work. Or there's so many other things that are, once, like after I've left my abusive relationship, I met a wise woman, and she said, abuse can be so many different things, and it can happen on so many different levels. And there's like emotional abuse and verbal abuse and financial abuse and so many forms of abuse. And she said, those don't leave bruises, visible bruises on your skin, but they leave bruises on your inside, and nobody can see them. And they often also take much longer to heal. And I'm thinking of all these kids at school who are covered with bruises inside on their souls, because of all the different things. Just, this constantly being judged, or, if, for example, they've gone through a lot of trauma, or something really hard is happening in their families, maybe a parent is very sick or something, and they carry just a lot of baggage with them when they come into this building, and they are just constantly judged and pressured, and there's no room for them to be. And the system just adds on so much, like often so much trauma, unfortunately.
I mean, I have 4 children, and I'm one well, we are 2, but I imagine having 30.
I know.
And it's not your own, so you don't tuck them in at night. You don't save them from their nightmares. You don't talk with them while you're making the stir fry. It's all the little things that get you close and give them moments to say, Mom, I need to talk to you about something.
Yeah.
Of course they don't know. The
Exactly.
school teachers, of course they don't. How can they know? And with that top-down curriculum bullshit, pushing the teachers to teach specific things at specific times, not feeling their crowd. What do they need? What would make them happy? No, I have to do this.
I think also, it is so much connected to the whole way of living that we have, because we're, I mean, maybe not you and I, but most people are just rushing through their days and their life. So there is no room to actually like really cultivate connections, neither to like neighbors nor to their own children, really. And I believe if we would slow down, if we would cut out all the like endless paperwork, admin stuff, whatever that we have come up with, and just simplified life so much more, and we're more present with ourselves and with each other, and like took out all the stuff. I mean, like for me, for example, when I think about it now, this kind of idea of you have to work 9 to 5, like somebody has once come up with this idea that this is the amount of hours that you should work, and then you get paid because you've been in that building from 9 to 5, and then you get paid no matter, I mean, most of the times you have like requirements, but also it's also a lot about just spending the time there. And I bet there's like millions of people who spend most of their time at work with, scrolling social media or something.
Oh yeah,
And so I just feel if we would change like our whole lifestyle, then we would already have so much more connection with ourselves, with our families, with the people around us, and like create these kinds of villages where we really can see each other, and where we really feel each other and support each other. And that is also, I feel like, can we maybe cultivate another way of communicating with each other where we are both more courageous and more compassionate, and really learn how we can really create like really good relationships. And that goes back to the beginning of our conversation with the socialization. Like, no, most people have not learned how to create and maintain healthy relationships where we can have, I call it courageous conversations, when we talk about the things that feel uncomfortable, and at the same time are still really compassionate and really respectful. I think that would already change so much.
And I think actually that's another conversation we should take. I think it could be interesting to take another dialogue with you, also talking about what ideals is it that we put on people through a school system versus if they had been at home. There is like this brain drain going on from smaller villages. There's been when we came and gave the schools to needed people who needed the schools who didn't have them, and you can just see how that removed the loss from people to actually be working in the local community because they got these new ideas and all that. But this is only a teaser because I would love to hear your thoughts about that. But in another episode, because
Absolutely.
It's running.
yeah, and we're trying to keep them
Yeah.
kind of short. So
Absolutely.
Rebecca, it was a big pleasure. I suggest people find you if you just briefly mention your Facebook and social media handle so people can go check you out, and we will also put it in the show notes.
Absolutely. It takes a village.se. So that .se is probably the most
Complicated part.
Yeah.
exactly.
No.
Yeah. Perfect. And it was really a wonderful conversation with you. Thank you.
But thank you.
I also really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this really, really important work.
Thank you.
Having courageous conversations.
Absolutely.